Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. And after all this time, you still give me butterflies. Written by Cuddle Cookie 1360. Read by Jennifer. He walked through the hallways after his meeting with King Harrow, feeling weighted down by the letter in his backpack and the sudden, very real possibility that he may never see him again when he hears a rush of air go by. "Ez, is that you?" he asks, peering through one of the halls, because he's not sure who else it would be, and he really needs to find him and apologize. Seeing nothing, he turns to the other hallway and calls out, "Hello?" like the person chasing him will respond. Since no one replies, he continues on his merry way, trying hard to keep the possible last image of King Harrow from his mind and focusing on getting back to his room. A few seconds later, he hears the subtle shink of metal and the tapping of light footsteps behind him. He figures it's just Ezran going to pull a prank on him again, so he humors him and keeps walking. When the footsteps get loud enough that he's close by, Callum says, "You know you can't sneak up on me," and turns around. He sure wasn't expecting a figure clad in blue and green with a hood over their head and very big, very pointy twin swords in their hands. He instinctively puts his hands up in surrender and lets out an embarrassing sound of surprise. Seeing no reason to continue hiding, the figure pulls down their hood. Violet eyes pierced through his, and white hair lined the girl's face. Her most notable traits were the plum purple markings on her cheeks, pointed ears, and small horns on top of her head. An elf, one of the assassins no less. Panicking, he begins to apologize. You're not who I thought you..." But then he realizes he shouldn't be apologizing to one of the assassins. "You're one of those with the pointy..." She smirks, which sets him on edge. "Oh, you don't like my ears." He wasn't expecting her voice to sound so outlandish, but it does sound kind of nice. And he's been more focused on the fact that she's an assassin than her being an elf. "No," he says, at first in disagreement, but then he realizes that it sounds like he's saying he doesn't like her ears, which he kind of finds intriguing. Yes, I do, I guess. The pointed swords." She points one of her pointy swords at him. "That's far enough. I'm looking for someone." He needs a plan, and fast. "Oh, did you check back there?" He points to a random spot behind her, but focuses on the curtain nearby. She tries not to peek over, but eventually she does, and he rushes forward and pulls it down over her. She yelps as he starts to mad dash away, losing precious time as he nearly trips over his own 2 feet. He knows that as soon as she breaks out of the trap, she'll be able to catch up with him in half a second. So he books it for the towers where he knows the guards are posted. He hears the tearing of the curtain behind him and pulls down one of the suits of armor. He doubts it'll do much to stop her, but it's worth a shot. He hears her flipping over his back as he runs up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. He reaches the tower and passes by some of the guards. Once he's safely behind them, he informs them, "She's right behind me," and points to the entryway. The guards ready their swords, and Callum backs away. He's not looking for a fight, and they can protect him well enough. The assassin flicks her blades and charges forward. He knows he should be running. He has some common sense. But part of him is intrigued enough to stick around. She flips around their attacks and then jumps into the air, twirling around in a spiral and landing on the other side. Although she's trying to kill him, he can't help but be amazed. None of the human guards do anything like that. They kind of just wear heavy armor and sit around. She tucks her blades under their shoes and flicks them up, and the guards topple forward. His jaw drops. "Hey, you swept the leg!" he shouts, reveling in fact that Soren was wrong about something. Reveling in the fact that Soren was wrong about something. She questions, and when she turns around, he's reminded of what she came there to do. Nothing, he replies. They stare at each other for a few seconds, and he decides now would be a good time to start running. She chases after him. He runs up the spiral steps of the tower, and he can feel the wind brush by and he knows she's hot on his heels. He calls out, "Lord Viren, Claudia, anyone!" hoping that someone will hear and come to save him. He doesn't want to die. Not yet. She shoves into him and he stumbles forward, crashing against a table. His backpack is thrown to the side and it stings his back as he thinks he hit his head. But he's got bigger problems to worry about. With nowhere left for him to run, the assassin strides towards him, blades out to the side. The light of the sunset streams in behind her, illuminating the silver in her swords and hair. Her violet eyes seem to glimmer in her determined glare, and she looks almost like an image he would sketch. He knows he shouldn't be thinking about that right now. But the thought of she's pretty flashes through his mind. Her next words of, "You don't have to die," shut down those thoughts as quickly as they come. She walks over to him, standing close enough to touch him with her swords. If she wanted to. There are only 2 targets tonight. Did he hit his head really hard, or did she say 2? Wait, 2? What do you mean? "I'm here for the king," she answers, "and I'm also here for his son, Prince Ezran." Callum's heart leaps in his throat and his stomach drops. Not his brother. Ezran's far too kind and much too young to die that night. He still had yet to finish school, or be a teenager, or go to all the kingdoms. He still hasn't eaten all the jelly tarts in Katalis, or gone on a horseback trail with Soren, or helped Callum write his comic. Ezran was 10. 10 years old. He couldn't die. Not yet. And Ezran was his brother, regardless of whether they had the same father or not. He was all he had left of his mother. She couldn't take him away from him. He couldn't fathom a life without Ezran, who told him stories of animals in the woods and came to him when it was stormy outside and the thunder was loud and the lightning was bright, and went on late-night jelly tart heists with him and got him sick because he took care of him. He was his brother, his little brother. He didn't deserve such a cruel fate. He couldn't die. He wouldn't die. Callum wouldn't allow it. "You can't. That's not fair. Why would you hurt someone who's done nothing wrong?" he asks, desperately hoping that maybe, just maybe, he can convince her not to. Maybe, just maybe, she's reasonable. She'll see that she can't kill an innocent kid. "Humans cut down the king of the dragons and destroyed his only egg. The dragon prince," she replies, pushing her swords towards his throat. "Justice will not be denied." "I see," he says, because he gets it, even though he tries not to. Of course the elves would want revenge for their fallen king. If Ezran was randomly killed by elves, Callum would want revenge against them too. It makes sense, even though it's not fair. Ezran didn't kill the Dragon King. Ezran didn't even know that much about dragons. He didn't deserve to be slaughtered because the adults made a terrible decision. He thinks about Ezran and how much he means to the king, to Katalis, to himself. Ezran is kind and smart and brave and strong, and he has so much to offer the world and so much more left to live for. Ezran can't die. He can't. So Callum makes a decision, looks up and declares, "Well then, you found me. I am Prince Ezran." The assassin narrows her eyes, and fear passes through Callum. There's suddenly a very cold reality that he might die within the next few minutes. He doesn't want to die. Not yet. But more than anything, he doesn't want Ezran to die. He scrambles back, trying to prolong his life for even just a few more minutes. And the elf follows him. He hits the wall. "I have to do this. I'm sorry," she says, and Callum sees something close to regret in her eyes. "I don't want to, but I have to." "Why?" he exclaims. "You know this is wrong." She's quick to snap. "An assassin doesn't decide right and wrong, only life and death." He blanches. "That's very clever, but come on, really, how does this solve anything?" "This is justice. The humans attacked us unprovoked." "So it's okay for you to do the same thing?" She draws her blade back for a second. "Well, no," she agrees, and he thinks for a second he's convinced her. "It's not the same thing, because we're attacking you, provoked." She returns her blades to his head. "Then it's a cycle. You hurt me, someone will get revenge against the elves. It won't end." "Callum!" He hears a muffled voice, muffled behind something, and panic rises in his throat. "Psst, Callum!" "Shh, go away!" He tries to subtly say, but the elf raises an eyebrow and peers down at him. "I found something," Ezran reports, clearly not understanding what "go away" means. "Are you talking to that Payton?" the assassin asks, looking at him as if to say, "Humans are strange." He chuckles nervously and wavers her off. Why would I do that? Because it's not a good time." "You mean because you're with a girl?" Ezran asks, and Callum almost face palms. "Almost." The assassin wanders over to the painting while keeping her eyes and sword trained on Callum, and his heart pounds. She flicks open the painting to reveal a stone passageway and his little brother, holding bait and a jelly tart. He says, and then he offers her his treat. "Jelly tart?" "Kid, get out of here," Callum says, in a last-ditch effort to get Callum away into safety. Or Ezran away into safety. "Callum, what's going on?" They didn't have the best coordination, however. "Callum?" the assassin questions. "I thought you were Prince Ezran. You lied to me." He puts his hands up in surrender. "Okay, how is this worse than trying to kill someone?" Ezran munches on the jelly tart, and both their heads turn to him. He holds up Bait. "Have you met Bait? Say hello to my little friend." Bait begins to glow bright yellow and blue, and Callum gets the hint and closes his eyes. A flash of light blinds them all, and he hears the assassin yelp and drop her blades. When the light dies down, Ezran says, "Callum, follow me. I have to show you something." Realizing that Ezran did finally get the hint, Callum picks up his backpack, and without another glance at the elf, he runs for the passage. Ezran closes the entrance behind them. Relief washes through him as they walk away. He thinks he won't ever end up seeing the elf again. Well, he thought wrong. He hasn't known the elf, Rayla, for long, and he's aware he's denser than a pile of bricks. But even he picks up on her disdain of water. She keeps low to the floor of the boat and looks utterly miserable, like she'd rather be anywhere else. He can relate in a sense. He really hates long carriage rides and always feels sick when it goes over bumps. Ezran or the king are usually there to distract him, and he thinks it's just what she needs. A distraction. They've barely known each other for a day. They aren't close at all. They're barely acquaintances, and certainly not friends. She did try to kill him, but he doesn't like seeing her sickly and downcast. He also feels bad for putting her in that situation in the first place, even though they both know the boat is indeed faster and can't be tracked. He figures the least he can do is try and make their trip more enjoyable for her. Bait loves the water, but he should be afraid of it, he said while rowing. He leans forward. You want to know why he's named Bait? Rayla groans and sits up reluctantly, as if the sound of his voice grates on her nerves. Not really. Well, I'm going to tell you anyways, he exclaims. It's kind of a sick joke, I guess. Glow toads? They're apparently delicious. Gross, she replies, looking at Bait in disgust. Deep-sea fishermen use them to catch fish, stuff like that. He continues, that's why he's named Bait. He chuckles. Get it? That's my stepdad's sense of humor. But yeah, that's why we have to be extra careful of him not getting in the water. Ezran marches over. Guys, he doesn't know how delicious he is, so shh. Bait groans behind him. Ezran quickly changes his tone. And that's how the noodle got its name. Callum and Rayla look at each other. Callum and Rayla share a look. Like, what is he on about? But then Rayla returns to dry heaving and gagging over the side of the boat, and Ezran preens Bait. Callum looks at her with concern. You doing all right? I'm doing great, she replies. She was, in fact, not doing great. She groans again. I just love boats so much. That's why I'm down here, to be close to the boat. She gags for the millionth time that boat ride, and Callum feels awful for putting her in that position. He needs to make it up somehow. He looks back at Ezran and thinks about all those horrible carriage rides, and he remembers a game Ezran and Kinghara used to have him play to distract him. Tell you what, he says, I'm going to ask you 5 questions. Please don't. Come on, it'll be a fun distraction. Help take your mind off things. Rayla sighs. 5 questions. That's all you get. Okay, question 1. He thinks long and hard about it. He only has 5 questions. 5 chances to learn something new about their new companion, and he needs to use them wisely. We've always heard all these crazy things about Xadia, like it was this place with just magic everywhere. Is that what it's really like? Rayla brightens for a second, and he thinks he might get a detailed answer. Yes. Next question. Oh no, he's not letting that subject drop. He's been curious about Xadia ever since they started their journey, and this may be his one chance to learn something about it. It must be so weird that everywhere you look, there's magic, he comments. It's not weird, she replies, and he celebrates in his head that he's gotten somewhere. In Xadia, magic is pretty much in everything. She leans over the side of the boat, not because she's sick, but because she's wondering, and Callum feels accomplishment fluttering in his chest. It's no different than saying everywhere you look, there's nature. It's just a part of the vibrancy or spirit of things, you know? No, he didn't know, but he wasn't about to ruin the fond look on her face. I can't wait to see that. It sounds incredible, he says, going over and sitting on the seat near her. Yeah, it is, she responds, smiling adoringly. He can't help but think she looks much nicer with a smile on her face. Not that she doesn't look nice all of the time, but he thinks he likes to see her happy more. Callum leans over the side of the boat next to her. See, it's working, right? Don't you feel a little better? Maybe so, she answers, grinning at him playfully, and he thinks that maybe, just maybe, she might hate him a little less. He knows he's an idiot when he goes out in the storm. He knows it probably won't fix anything or bring anything back to him. And it doesn't. But there's always a chance. He tries to feel the hum of electricity in the air and lightning in the sky, but the wind and cold block his senses. The lightning rod only makes things worse, and if he wanted to feel electricity and lightning, he certainly did. There's a seed of doubt when Zim remains curled up after the strike. but he sees electricity form around his mouth and he knows he's fine. Callum isn't so lucky. He'll admit he did set his hopes a little too high, and disappointment was inevitable. But he can't help but be jealous of Zim's new ability and his lack of them. His heart is heavy, and he trudges back to the boat. All he's got out of it was soaked clothes, a hole in his heart, and a dragon who's too lazy to walk back. Raylan and Ezran dash out to meet him when he returns, just as the sun begins to rise. Callum, what happened? Ezran questions. He thinks he can't face them. He can't. They'll no doubt call him an idiot, which he already knows he is, but he also feels too heavy and weighed down to care. We went into the heart of the storm, he explains, and Zim, he got struck by lightning. Although Callum knows he's fine, he still plays up the panic in his voice. It hurts to make them hurt, and the horrified gasps rip bigger holes in his heart, but Zim wriggles in his arms, and he can't help but smile a little. But I think he's okay. Zim peeks up finally, and lightning zaps from his mouth. Ezran laughs, relieved, and takes the dragon from Callum's arms, snuggles him close. Electricity pours out of Zim's mouth as he chatters. Rayla wanders over to him. What's wrong? I feel stupid, he says bluntly, because why dart around the issue when he could just state the facts? He hates admitting it, but he tells her, You were right. He turns away. Callum, he can't stop talking now. Words pour out of his mouth. I could have gotten Zim killed. I put us both in danger. And worst of all, when we were right there in the center of the storm, I thought I wanted this badly enough. But in the end, I didn't have the guts. God, he feels stupid. He accomplished nothing and only put himself and the Dragon Prince in danger. And for what? Soaking clothes and numbness in his heart. He feels weight drop on his shoulders, and he follows it to see Rayla's soft expression. She turns him around towards her. Good, she says, and he's not sure whether she leans into him or she pulls him into her. But she rests her head on his back and her hands on his shoulders in a hug. He's surprised at first. They've known each other for a little over a week, hardly long enough to become close friends, and they don't have anything in common, and they fight a lot, and they come from opposite worlds, and they're so completely different. But he can't think about that when Rayla's pressed up against him, and it feels right. She feels right. And so he wraps his arms around her back too, and holds her gently. It's a sign of their friendship, he thinks. A little spark of joy returns to his heart.